Good day, dear students. In today's lesson, we are going to look at the four different sentence forms. Sentences are of four different kinds, forms: simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. Let's first tackle the simple sentences. These are also called an independent clause. They contain a subject, predicate, and express a complete thought. Remember, predicate is all the information about the subject. Subject is the performer of the action. For example, some students like to study in the mornings. This sentence has the subject students. It has a verb like, and it is giving us a complete information about the students that they like to study in the mornings. Juan and Anthony play football every afternoon. Juan and Anthony are the subject. Play is the verb. The rest is the predicate. The whole sentence expresses a complete thought. Alicia goes to the library and studies every day. Alicia is the performer of the action, hence the subject. Goes is the verb. And to the library and studies every day is the predicate. Altogether, the sentence expresses a complete thought. Cindy and Sue auditioned for lead roles in the play. Okay, here's a little exercise. Identify the subject and predicate in these simple sentences. Cindy and Sue auditioned for the lead role in the play. The kittens were adopted by the family. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are my favorite. The committee decorated the gym for Friday night's dance. The surprise party was organized by Wendy's two best friends. Pause the video and try to answer the questions yourselves. If you notice, Cindy and Sue are the subject. Audition for the lead role in the play is the predicate, whereas auditioned is the verb. In the next one, kittens are the subject. Were adopted is the verb. And from the verb till the end, you have the predicate. Peanut butter and jelly is the subject. Sorry, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches is the subject. Are is the verb. And are my favorite is the predicate. The committee decorated the gym. Committee is the subject. Decorated is the verb. And decorated the gym for Friday night's dance is the predicate. Surprise party is the subject. Was organized is the verb. And was organized by Wendy's two best friends all together is the predicate. Compound sentences. Compound sentences contain two independent clauses. Simple sentences. That is, independent clauses mean simple sentences and they are joined by a coordinating conjunction. The conjunctions are as follows: for, and, not, but, or, yet, so. A helpful hint: the first letter of each of the conjunction spells fanboys. So if you remember the word fanboys, you can always remember the 7 important conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions in the English language. Except for very short sentences, these conjunctions are always preceded by a comma. That is, before you write any of these conjunctions, you will have to write a comma. Preceded means before. You write a comma before the coordinating conjunction. Let's have a look at the example. I tried to speak Spanish and my friend tried to speak English. Now, if you notice in this sentence, I tried to speak Spanish is a complete idea. Hence, this is an independent clause. My friend tried to speak English, complete idea. Hence, this is also an independent clause. But because two independent clauses are joined by a coordinating conjunction, therefore, together they have made up a compound sentence. Okay? Now, if we notice, I is the subject, tried is the verb of the first independent clause. Of the second independent clause, my friend is the subject and tried is the verb. So this is your independent clause number 1, and this is your independent clause number 2. Two independent clauses are joined together by a coordinating conjunction to make a compound sentence. Example 2. Alex played football. Maria went shopping. When we combine these two independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction, the sentence becomes Alex played football, comma, so Maria went shopping. Full stop. The class will get a reward, comma, for we always behave. The class will get a reward is your first independent clause. We always behave is your second independent clause. Both clauses are joined together by the coordinating conjunction for. In the first sentence, class is the subject, will get is the verb. In the second sentence, we is the subject and behave is the verb. Another little exercise for you guys. Identify the conjunction in these compound sentences. Pause the video and try to do the exercise yourselves. I'm going to dance. I'm going to the dance, so I have to buy a new dress. So is the coordinating conjunction. This is your first independent clause, and this is your second independent clause. Number 2, Jenny took the pictures and Aaron developed them. An is the coordinating conjunction, preceded by the comma. Jenny took the pictures is the first independent clause. Aaron developed them is the second independent clause. Number 3, New York is on the East Coast and California is on the West Coast. New York is on the East Coast is your first sentence, comma, coordinating conjunction, and comes your second sentence. Bill walked into the crowded room, but I can't find him. But is the coordinating conjunction. First independent clause, then you put a little comma, comes your coordinating conjunction, and comes your second independent clause. Here's a question statement. Is the party on Friday Or is it on Saturday? This is your first independent clause. Then you add a comma. Immediately after the comma comes your coordinating conjunction. Then comes your second independent clause. And because it is a question statement, you're going to put a question mark at the end. Moving over to complex sentences. Complex sentences. A complex sentence has an independent clause joined by a dependent clause or a subordinate clause. Dependent clauses do not express a complete thought and can't stand alone as sentences. A dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction such as because, since, after, although, when, etc. Follow these formats when writing complex sentences. You can write the dependent clause first, put a comma, and then write the independent clause. Since I have no milk, comma, I'll go to the store. I'll go to the store is the independent clause. It can exist on its own. But when I say since I have no milk, it is a dependent clause beginning with the subordinating conjunction since. Remember, between the dependent and the independent clause, you have to put a comma. And obviously, the full stop comes at the end. The second way you can make a complex sentence is by writing the independent clause first, and then write the dependent clause. In such a case, there's no need to write a comma. You can add a comma, but even if you don't, it's absolutely okay. I'll go to the store since I have no milk. I'll go to the store, again, is your independent clause, and since I have no milk is your dependent clause. Let's have a look at some more examples. When he handed in his homework, he forgot to hand the teacher the last page. When he handed in his homework is the dependent clause because it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction when. And because dependent clause is in the beginning, you are going to put a comma before you write the independent clause. The teacher returned the homework after she noticed the error. The teacher returned the homework is the independent clause. And after she noticed the error is the dependent clause because it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction. The students are studying because they have a test tomorrow. The students are studying is your independent clause. Wait, I'll change the color. It is your independent clause, whereas because they have a test is a dependent clause, because since it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction. After they finished studying, Jack and Maria went to the movies. After is a subordinating conjunction letting us know that this portion is the dependent clause, whereas, and then you're going to put a comma, and then comes your independent clause. Jack and Maria went to the movies. The idea is complete, hence an independent clause. Identify the dependent clause in each complex sentence. Because it was raining, the game was called off. Pause the video and sort out the examples. Because it was raining, the game was called off. Because it was raining, oh my. Because it was raining is the dependent. I'm so sorry. I'm so bad at making lines. I'll try one more time. Because it was raining is the dependent clause as it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction. When I feel sick is the dependent clause since it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction when. Mark is not going since I never invited him. Since I never invited him is the dependent clause and it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction since. George played football because John went shopping. Because John went shopping is the dependent clause as it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction because. If you want a pizza, you need to order it now. If you want a pizza is your dependent clause as it is beginning with the subordinating conjunction if and since dependent clause is coming in the beginning, you're going to put a comma before you write the independent clause. I hope everything is clear till now because the last idea of compound complex sentences is a wee bit trickier. Compound complex sentence. As the title suggests, it will have the characteristics of both the compound sentences and complex sentences. So it contains two independent clauses and one dependent clause. You put a comma after the dependent clause if it begins the sentence. You put a comma before the and, but, or that connects the two independent clauses. Okay, I'll repeat again. In a compound complex sentence, if the sentence begins with the dependent clause, you are going to put the comma at the end of the dependent clause, just like we saw in the complex sentences. But if the sentence begins with an independent clause, and the next sentence is also an independent clause, which begins with one of the fanboys, then before the fanboys, you are going to put a comma. Let's have a look at some examples to clarify the situation of using the punctuation appropriately. Charlie could not hear his watch because it had stopped, and he was worried. Now, you can see that the sentence is color-coded. The independent clauses are in red color, whereas the dependent clause is in purple color. Charlie could not hear his watch. The idea is complete. It is an independent clause. He was worried. Again, the idea is complete. So it is an independent clause. Because it had stopped, on its own, the idea is incomplete. Also, this statement is beginning with a subordinating conjunction because. Now, dependent clause, independent clause, independent clause, dependent clause. The sentence begins with an independent clause, moves over to a dependent clause, and then another independent clause comes. Now, the second independent clause begins with a coordinating conjunction and. So, before the coordinating conjunction, you are going to insert a comma. Let's look at it in a different way. In the second example, the same sentence is in a different sequence. You have a dependent clause, Then comes an independent clause, and again you have an independent clause. Because it had stopped, comma, as I told you earlier in the previous slide, that if your sentence begins with a dependent clause, you will have to write comma at its end. Because it had stopped, comma, Charlie could not hear his watch, comma, and he was worried. The second comma is written because the next sentence is an independent clause beginning with a fanboy and. That is the coordinating conjunction and. Another example. Although Sarah called out for Charlie, no one answered and Sarah was scared. Again, a dependent clause. You put a comma. You have an independent clause. Again, you are now going to put a comma because you have a coordinating conjunction and another independent clause. Sarah could not see Charlie, but when she was on the hilltop, she could hear him cry out. Independent clause. And notice what has happened over here. Oh, wait, independent clause, independent clause, dependent clause. Now, what has happened? The coordinating conjunction has been brought over here. There is an independent clause at the end, but you can bring, for added emphasis or to bring interest in to make your work interesting, you can sometimes bring the coordinating conjunction before the dependent clause as well. Notice that we already have a subordinating conjunction over here. That is why this sentence is a dependent clause. Sarah could not see Charlie, comma. This comma is here because of the coordinating conjunction. But when she was on the hilltop, she could hear him cry out. Full stop at the end. With that, we come to the end of our session. I hope you have understood the concept quite well. I am going to give you some worksheets so that you can practice and the idea is later reinforced in your smart minds. Thank you ever so much.